A huge appeal to the Souls game is undeniably their boss fights. These games are masterful at creating major encounters that stick in the minds of the players for years and years. From the beautiful cinematic presentation to the riveting and dynamic gameplay, From Software have proven time after time that they're at the helm when it comes to boss fights in the gaming medium, being some of the best to ever do it. In last week's video I spoke about the worst that FromSoft had to offer, but in today's video I'll be going through each game and highlighting its absolute peakest fight, from Demon Souls all the way to the newest edition Elden Ring, DLC included. Beginning with the series' root cause, Demon Souls was interesting as the bosses in this game were the furthest design wise from what we'd come to know as the norm from a Souls boss fight, which is kind of stating the obvious, but you know, the intense mechanical standoffs are mainly what spring to mind nowadays, but in Demon Souls, the roster of bosses had a lot of variety in their approaches to the encounters. Another way of saying this would be that a majority of them were gimmicky fights, and while I do appreciate and enjoy these styles of encounters every now and then, I was much more drawn to the more skill focused brawls where I wasn't given a solution. Because of this, fights like the Penetrator and the Flame Lurker rank extremely high for me in this game. Both are excellent in terms of the flow and pacing that they force players into. It creates these deeply entertaining duels with a lot more depth to them than fights like the Adjudicator or the Dragon God. However, I think that the fight that holds Demon Souls' peak would have to be False King Alon, which is the penultimate battle atop the King's Tower. This fight is incredible and serves the player a fine meal, combining many pieces together to serve what I believe to be the ultimate test of skill that this game has to offer. From his placement at the climax of the game to his grandiose design, music and arena complementing him perfectly, to of course the enthralling duel that require players to be at their best to make it through. The fight itself comes at the perfect point in the game, right at the tail end of your journey through Boletaria, having defeated every other demon on your path. This entire level feels like a movie, with the False King being the perfect antagonist to foil. His design is awesome, both a mix of badassery and intimidation that radiate from just a glance. The music in both the original and the remake are excellent, but kind of serve different purposes I think. I feel like the original does a great job at highlighting the intensity of the encounter and just how fearful the enemy ahead is, whereas the remake leans more towards that epic finale type of track, but I do enjoy both. Ultimately though, the gameplay is what the main course consists of, being a culmination of the skills that you've learned throughout the game. The False King has a moveset that feels like rapid fire. He's extremely aggressive and able to catch you off guard with quick swings, but the most punishing of his moves is of course the Soul Drain ability. I just know there's some poor guy out there who lost about 15 levels to him on their first playthrough. It's a really cheeky thing to put in, but as it's the only time they've ever done it, I think it's more funny to just look back and laugh on rather than complain. I know he's not the true final boss, but in terms of challenge, he most definitely is, and he's a worthy encounter that feels like a triumphant victory earned through persistence and mastery. Next up we have Dark Souls 1, a game that upgraded in pretty much every quality from its predecessor, including of course its bosses. For me, there's actually a few candidates to pick from when choosing the best boss from this game. Do I go with Manus, whose extremely challenging nature creates the most rewarding triumph in the game, or do I go with Calamity, whose amazing presentation kickstarted the wave of incredible dragon fights that the preceding games had in store for us? Or maybe I even go with the iconic duo of Ornstein and Smo, a fight that pushed the series forward with the inclusion of the first fully fledged second phase that a boss fight could offer. Well, those are excellent choices that I wouldn't fault anybody else for picking, but my choice for the best boss in Dark Souls 1 is and always will be Knight Artorias from the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. What a fight. Demon Souls' False King may have had everything, but Artorias has everything and more, as it's an unbelievably legendary fight that is firing on all cylinders. The fight itself is a great challenge, levels above what most of the base game had to offer. Similarly to Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 is a game with a lot of different boss styles, so humanoids like this were not common, making this 1v1 duel stand out. It's a relentless encounter with seldom a moment to breathe. Artorias is fast, unpredictable and continuously aggressive, pushing players to be equally agile and reactive. In addition to that, you need to know the ins and outs of his moveset, as many attacks can chain into a series of disastrous moves for the player. However, the fight isn't all mechanics. What really separates Artorias' battle from the other great fights I mentioned earlier is his lore, a narrative steeped in tragedy and rich with emotional weight. Learning about him from other NPCs in the game versus finding him in the DLC was amazing. Analysing the little details like him only using a single arm during the fight to the screams and howls he makes highlight him as a character just as much as it does a boss. Even the music is potent, a hauntingly somber theme that manages to make us listen to the story just as powerfully as our eyes can see. He's a focal figure in the game, a legend and an unforgettable encounter. Still in my opinion, one of the greatest bosses that From Software have created to this day. Moving on to Dark Souls 2, a game with a mixed bag when it comes to the bosses. A lineup that can range from masterfully brilliant to absolutely abysmal. I had a tough time choosing between two bosses, those being the Fume Knight and Sir Alon. And even with those two, there were still some other close contenders like the Dark Lurker, Sin and the Burnt Ivory King. But ultimately, I narrowed it down to those two. Sir Alon is an extremely mesmerizing duel in every essence of the phrase. It's a fight that feels almost personal with his elegant moveset, the excellent arena, design and the unbelievable music. I fell in love with him the moment I entered the stage. However, in the very same DLC, you fight a boss called the Fume Knight, who's my pick for the best boss of Dark Souls 2. If you wanted a DLC with just fantastic bosses, the Crown of the Old Iron King was your guy, because even the reskinned Smelter Demon was pretty good in my eyes. Taking place after exploring the extremely convoluted and complex Broom Tower in an arena that feels cold and ashen, the Fume Knight stands with a moveset that is both fleshed out and excellent. The two weapons that he wields keep players on their toes, offering different attack patterns to get used to in the first phase, although that is shoved straight out of the window when he ragefully transitions to his second phase, to main the iconic Fume Ultra Greatsword. I think both the Fume Knight and Sir Alon mechanically are some of the best that Dark Souls 2 has to offer, but what puts Fume Knight ahead once again is his lore connections. The ties with Vendrick and his undying hatred towards Velstad, even to the point where seeing someone resembling him forces his full power out. I think it's all wonderfully executed and adds some extra layer to the encounter that just isn't there with the fight against Sir Alon. Also, this might sound silly, but the fact that the Fume Knight has an extremely simple run back does wonders in the long term, and unfortunately I can't say the same for Sir Alon. It feels like I'm splitting hairs, but they're really that close in my eyes, so anything to put one above the other goes. This game's bosses had a lot of hiccups along the journey, but the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC delivered upon that aspect wonderfully. Let's talk about Bloodborne. This game has some excellent bosses at the top. I could go with the Orphan of Kos for its monumentally challenging yet satisfying fight that, similar to Manus from Dark Souls 1, pushed me to my limits in a fantastic way. Another choice I could go with would be the fight against the final boss, the Moon Present that I'm obviously playing. I mean Gurman, the First Hunter. A tremendous final encounter with a good amount of challenge, presented spectacularly in one of From Software's greatest arenas combined with one of their greatest scores. However, once again we travel to the DLC to decide between another two really close bosses in my eyes. On my first couple of playthroughs, I adored the fight against Lady Medea of the Astral Clock Tower, as I was blown away by the spectacle of it. The whole thing is gorgeous, and upon learning about the lore, I loved it even more. I intentionally like to take my time with the fight to smother myself with the experience, because admittedly she's a little easier than the other bosses in the Old Hunters DLC. With all that being said though, one boss that I've continuously grown to enjoy more and more over countless playthroughs of the game is the opening boss to that very DLC, Ludwig the Accursed. They went hard whilst creating this masterpiece. Firstly, can we talk about his design? Like, what in the hell? How does the mind even create something like this? It really is the pinnacle of how far From can go when creating something so nightmarish yet intriguing to look at. What a perfect encapsulation of the whole pursuit of knowledge theme. His introduction is unforgettable. The way he's talked about, his arena, the corpses littered everywhere. It's also oppressive and horrific, and it extends to his moveset, which is overwhelming as hell the first time you face him. In the first phase, Ludwig is a terrifying animalistic beast. His erratic movements and brutal attacks just instill a sense of fear and uncontrollable chaos. However, once he transitions to his second phase, we get to see one of the most perfect and game-defining cutscenes as he regains a semblance of his former self, retrieving the Moonlight Greatsword and standing upright to once again become a holy knight. And it's reflected in the change in moveset, which becomes much more controlled and disciplined, culminating in an absolutely thrilling battle from start to end. His story is sick in every sense, showcasing the danger of blindly killing in the name of righteousness, and the inclusion of the Holy Moonlight Greatsword is also iconic. I've not even said anything about the music, by the way, which is a track that words can't even describe how excellent of a piece it is, truly. Talking to him after the fight is cathartic and a great conclusion to the encounter, regardless of the choice you choose. An absolute hallmark of From Software's boss creations, simply incredible. Moving on to Dark Souls 3 now, which has a large amount of top tier boss fights across both the base game and the DLC. You could say that From Software pretty much nailed the formula at this point, as they had banger after banger after banger after after banger. It had the world and the vibes of Souls games with the combat and speed of Bloodborne. This just went on to create a plethora of encounters that were wonderfully fast paced and fun to partake in. Now I'd like to say I had a hard time choosing like I did with the games beforehand, but I'll be real, it's Gale. Most people would say Gale and I hate to do the same, but I just can't deny my enjoyment for one of From Software's greatest creations. They went ahead and created an excellent finale to the game in the Soul of Cinder that ended the Dark Souls trilogy in such cathartic fashion. But when the mad lads created the Ring City DLC, they went on and said, I'll do it again, because my goodness, you couldn't ask for a more perfect wrap up to the game in Slave Knight Gale. Firstly, the arena. The whole damn environment is breathtaking. The battle takes place in a desolate wasteland at the literal end of time, where the remains of civilization have collapsed into ash. Everything about him and this encounter narratively is beyond captivating. Standing as the last two survivors of time, facing off against one another, and the way he finally utters the words, "Your dark soul." He said it! He said it! Feels like an unexpectedly beautiful payoff. From that to the great challenge it also provided. On my first playthroughs, a majority of bosses in the series I fight my way through like a slog, only feeling the true fun afterwards, like, yeah, that was sick, I can't wait to do that on my next playthrough. But with Gale, I had just so much fun at every single swing of the sword. Every time I died I was excited to face him again. The rhythm and the flow of the battle was immaculate. His moveset is perfect, the first phase being a huge learning curve with the ability to slightly stagger him, creating for perfect points of respite. The second and third phases though, they are incredible. The cape operating as its own hitbox, the spectacle of it all, even the freaking crossbow, it's all majestic. And what's more majestic is the damn music. The symphony for a legend. The score is unreal. 10 plus out of 10. I don't even know what to say for it anymore. It sounds so motivating and fits into the battle perfectly. It's one hell of a climactic battle that will test every ounce of your resilience, as he's got a humongous health bar, but it truly feels like a culmination of your journey throughout not only Dark Souls 3 but the entire trilogy. With Gale out the way, I say let's move on to Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. This time there's no DLC to pick from, as shockingly this game didn't receive any. However, even without it, the lineup of bosses still remains to be really damn solid. Consistent quality throughout the game, but when it comes to choosing the best that it has to offer, I find the situation that I'm in similar to the one that I had with Dark Souls 3. We have a lot of strong contenders, but we have a majestic winner that I had no trouble in picking, and of course that would be Sword Sin Ishin. The final encounter of a majority of endings in this game where you are sweating your cheeks out to see through that victory. It is the biggest test of skill that the game will set for you, demanding full mastery of its mechanics. By the time players reach him, they've defined their skills through countless other bosses, but Ishin will take all of that and push those abilities to their limits. His first phase is definitely a starter, as his moveset begins off pretty comfortable and not too crazy, the pacing being more favoured towards players as they feel their way into the fight. However, when that second phase hits and he pulls all of this out, shit hits the fan. If I had to describe this portion of the fight in one word, it would be relentless. He is on your ass till the ends of time, overwhelming pressure with very little room to breathe, requiring you to be perfect in terms of deflections and counters. Hesitation is defeat, a perfect encapsulation of the way you should play this phase out, because his moveset is about as complex as you'd think. It's diverse, it's unpredictable, and he can seamlessly transition between close range swordplay and wide reaching spear attacks, and he can even pull out a fucking gun for the hell of it. It's so out of nowhere, but I love it. It reminds me of the crossbow in Gale's fight. The third phase, whilst being tough as nails, also provides the biggest opportunities to close out the battle with the inclusion of his lightning reversals, a mechanic that I thought was so badass. It's so satisfying to pull off and rewards you extremely well, taking massive amounts of health and dealing great posture damage to him. It can very well make it feel like a victory lap if you don't get careless. I also love how the fight takes place in the same area where you lost your arm at the start of the game, in this beautifully serene arena that contrasts the intensity that the fight brings. The honor that Ishin radiates, the finishing move that Wolf ends the fight with, everything is done magnificently, and it's without a doubt in my mind the best fight in Sekiro and one of the best finales in gaming history. Catching up to the newest iteration in the series, Elden Ring is a game with a lot. Full stop. It's a game that has a lot of everything. But what I mean is there's a lot of choices to choose from when picking for this video. With the other games I was struggling between a couple of choices, but here I'm struggling between a lot. From the incredibly cinematic battle against Dragonlord Placidus Axe, to the intensely dynamic encounter against the Lord of Blood, Mohg, to the straight up brawl against Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Hell, I've even come to enjoy Millennia a bunch over my time with the game. All these base game bosses are superb, and I could have easily chosen them for this spot, but there's this thing. It's called the DLC, and it's where FromSoft likes to shine the brightest. They really outdid themselves with two fights in particular, those being Bale and Mesmer, and I really love them both. Bale is that hidden boss that surprised everyone, whilst Mesmer was the one that got marketed and the one everyone knew was going to be a banger right from the get-go. Bale is perhaps the greatest dragon fight that they've ever created up until this point. The presentation is insane and the fight is incredible. The lead up with Egon and the whole Jagged Peak area was just cinema to witness. I really wanted to give this spot to him and it is incredibly close, but I am leaning towards Mesmer the Impaler for my choice as the best boss of Elden Ring. His introduction is brilliant, showcasing what he's about, the lax attitude, the initially dark arena, the sharp design. He's pretty edgy but I really like his character. The fight starts off hot and his moveset keeps the pace of the battle quick. His attacks are all over the place and force you to be alert, as he himself can dart around and do whatever the hell he wants. Transforming into his second phase, I was initially worried that the fight would turn messy real quick, but I was pleasantly surprised by how controlled and smooth it remained. It is a challenge and a half, but I think they did a great job with balancing the difficulty whilst keeping the fight fun and enjoyable. The music that plays during this whole fight is also amazing, and you can feel the agony that he's trying to portray in Mesmer's character, another aspect that is also handled brilliantly. The way he was used by Marika is tragic, but the final words he utters when you kill him stuck so hard with me. The way he addresses Marika as mother before just outright saying her name to curse her, it gave me chills. From this video, it's the boss who I've had the least amount of time with, and I am excited to venture deeper into both his character and his fight, but I can confidently say for now that in my opinion, Mesmer is the best boss that Elden Ring has to offer. And that does it! Those were my picks for the best fights from each game in the Souls series. I could talk about these all day long, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Did you agree with my picks? Leave some of your choices in the comments below. I'd love to see everyone gushing over their favourite bosses from these games. It's something that just never gets old. If you've stuck around till the end of the video, then thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot. It was such a joy to create this one and I'm already excited for the next. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, whether it be the countdowns, lists like these, or even essay style videos about the Soulsborne games. Have a great day everybody, I'll see you in the next one and peace!